So the other day, I'm in the car with my rich uncle, and we're driving for about an hour, and I love these drives because basically it gives me the chance to bother him with a lot of questions about money. Now all of a sudden we get into this topic about what keeps people poor, and he asks me, Tommy, what are 4 things that keep people poor all the time, like forever? And I start to blabble. I say, well, they don't invest early enough, they get into a lot of debt, they might have kids too early, they don't get into the right careers, and he tells me those are all legitimate reasons, but those are not real principles that can be followed along forever. And I asked him, well, what are they exactly, okay? What are these 4 things that can keep people poor forever? Now, when he basically told me them, I realized that these are things that in a sense I had to go through, I witnessed with my own eyes, and I also had to overcome them. And in this video, I'm gonna go ahead and share them with you. Now, these are things that, it's kind of deep, but it makes a lot of sense, and it's also so simple. I don't know what to tell you, okay? But when somebody really understands something and they lived it for over like almost half a century, the way they explained it is almost like childlike, and I actually appreciate that a ton. So I'm gonna make my best effort to give you guys this information in a very simple way. Now, as always, guys, like this video, on top of that, also subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified. Now, the very first one is women. He told me, Tommy, the very first thing is women. Now, if you're a girl watching this video and you're like, Tommy, you cannot generalize women, all women whatsoever, the answer is I wouldn't do that. That's pretty stupid. But this is guy talk, and we are in a car and we are talking about these things because basically these things happen. Now, he tells me, Tommy, women are one of those things that men tend to favor. And there are a lot of women, and men tend to chase women. And if they have money, they will do whatever they can to actually go ahead and try to get those women. Now, I'm not saying all men, but I'm saying this is actually a big, massive thing that can lead to destruction. Having to pursue all these women, making these extraordinary gifts and all this other stuff. And then I thought back to the Bible, and I was like, well, you guys remember King Solomon? One of the smartest people ever in history, one of the richest people ever in history. And it talks about in the Bible how he had over 700 wives. And in the end, although God gave him everything, he basically betrayed God in a sense for a woman. And that to me is kind of crazy. And the way I grew up, for example, was, you know, my dad, towards the end of his life, he gave his life to God. He made a lot of changes. He even kind of started like a little church, and that was pretty cool to me. But before that, I realized how this entire idea of lust and women kind of destroyed him. My dad was very good at making money, like amazing, like one of the best people I ever seen when it came to creating a business, making money, and all of a sudden losing everything. It was like this massive circle. And I saw that his life was kind of like a reality TV show. He had a bunch of kids from different women, and although it sounds good on paper, in the movies, to have a bunch of girls, it's not as cool in real life and the effect it actually has on your kids. And I saw what that actually did. So as a young man growing up, and everyone telling me, Tommy, it's so cool to have multiple girls and all this stuff, I said, is it? Is it really that cool? Because all I see with people that have all those things is a bunch of headaches and a bunch of problems, and their life usually looks like a reality TV show. So for me, it's something I avoid. And whenever I think about letting my mind take over when it comes to those, because I'm a guy, okay, I'm a guy. But whenever that happens, I always think back to Proverbs 31st, where it basically says, you know, beauty fades, and a good woman is described in that Proverbs, and it's actually amazing. So to me, my whole goal is get married, have kids, and have a very boring life, and that's what I look forward to. I don't want to have a reality TV show, but I have seen a bunch of lives destroyed just for the sake of pursuing something else. Like J. Cole says, okay, you're never going to be happy until you love what you have. And to me, that is a beautiful little quote. Now, number 2, guys, isn't it weird how I make all these weird connections like, oh, King Solomon, oh, Proverbs, oh, by the way, J. Cole too, right? Like, that's what I love about knowledge, you know, and also my dad, right? That's what I love about knowledge. It's like so all over the place. Now, number 2 is the love of games, the love of gambling. And it comes down to just risk overall. And he tells me, Tommy, there are people out there that have everything they need, and they still go out there and they risk it every single day just to get a little bit more. And that is the risk of gambling. I've seen people have some money and put it to the test, and just basically lose all of it and say, well, we'll try again tomorrow, see what happens. It's like this constant itch to kind of like just take a risk and to kind of pursue this dopamine hit all the time with gambling overall. Now, for me personally, I'm very anti-risk, okay? I don't really like risk. And all my life, I've loved to play games that basically all the odds are in my favor. I'm a cheater, okay? I'll be honest with you. Now, overall, this brought me back to Warren Buffett when he says, if you risk what you have and need to get something you don't have and don't need, eventually you'll end up selling what you do have and need to pay for those dumb things. And it makes a lot of sense. So the overall idea is this, okay? As far as gambling and pursuing risk and thinking that life is all about how fast can I do something? How fast can I take this risk? I see this all the time. And by the way, these people don't look how you think they look. They're not the people, well, they are those people, but they're not just those people. They're not the people just in the casinos, people that basically take mortgages on their homes, take liens and all that stuff. No, it's also the business guys, also the entrepreneurs, also the YouTubers, also the random guy that has all this money and he's constantly putting everything at risk. This also reminds me of Jesse Lawnmower, I think that was his name. This guy made over $1 billion on one trade. Look him up during the Great Depression. He shorted the market and it was amazing. It was beautiful. He made over $1 billion, I think, like in today's money in one day. And in a few years, he lost everything and he ended up taking his own because he basically did not know when to stop. It's this feeling of this extra dopamine hit. So it's kind of like, the way I kind of mitigate this is kind of like, my whole goal is not to multiply everything at a crazy rate. My whole goal is just to go steady at a good pace and to kind of just multiply my money good without taking a bunch of risks, without risking what I already have. And my whole thing is, if I get an opportunity that would put everything I have in jeopardy, I wouldn't do it. Even if the odds were like 75% or 80%, I wouldn't do it because there's this 20% chance that I'm basically gonna lose everything and it just doesn't make any sense. But if I find an opportunity where I can basically grab 100% of my capital that I don't really need and put it into that one opportunity, I don't mind because that's concentration of assets and you know what you're doing. But to risk what you do have, your family, all this stuff, I wouldn't do it. And by the way, one of my fears is coming home one day and telling my wife, hey, by the way, we just lost everything. And tell my kids, yeah, we lost everything. Forget about college. Like, to me, although I know God is the provider and all this stuff, to me, I know that although God provides, I could basically be very stupid and lose everything, right? So that's not what I want to do at all. So I'm always very careful with the things I do. And I always fall back to, what can I do to mitigate risks, to still be successful, but not take these crazy chances because it makes no sense. Now, this does not mean you're very too conservative, because it's also like a problem too, but it's being on point. Now, number 3 is this one, addictions, okay? Now, addictions is a very tricky thing, he told me. He told me, Tommy, addictions are tricky because basically your body tells you you need something. And when your body needs something, you're willing to do whatever it takes to supply that need that your body basically needs. And at that point, you kind of forget that at a certain point, you never needed that in the first place. And it's one of those dangerous cycles because once you get involved in an addiction, it can be very hard. You know, Warren Buffett also says, okay, the chains of habit are too light to be felt until they're too heavy to be broken. And it's so true because whenever you start this new habit that might be bad for you, you start doing it little by little, everything's fine. And then all of a sudden one day you can't stop. And you're like, what is going on here? And I saw that, for example, in one of my uncle's lives where he had this whole problem with drinking. And I was like, wow, man, this is so crazy. Like, and it was so hard for him to stop. And he finally stopped. But for him to get to stop, I remember he got an inheritance. He wasted all the money. He got enough money to live a lifetime. And it was just like all the money was gone. And when it comes to addiction, you know, I think Paul says in the Bible also, everything is legitimate. You can do anything you want, but not everything that you do is helpful. So that's why, for example, when somebody offers me, for example, like a drink, I say no. And they're like, just one, it's no big deal. I know it's no big deal, but it also doesn't help me with anything. And even having a slight risk of becoming anyway liking those things, I just don't think it's worth taking it. So as far as addictions, it's better to stay away from it. And I've also had my battles with addictions. And one thing I've learned is once you leave it in God's hands, kind of get taken care of. But the best thing is never to start them anyways, okay? Just never start. And if you do have a problem, get some help. okay? Like, help is real cool stuff. And you can find like Reddit places where you can kind of go in there. There are a whole bunch of groups and support groups and so on, and just get some help, okay? Because addictions are no fun. And whenever, I remember I saw this video on YouTube and it was so crazy, you know, it was this guy, he was so smart. He worked for NASA, a black guy. And he's like, yo, I used to say that I would never do this, and now I'm addicted to powder. You know, powder, the white girl, whatever you want to call it. And I'm like, yo, that's so crazy. Because this guy is like a whole like NASA guy, super smart, intelligent. He tells me, you know, I haven't done it today, but right after I'm done with this interview, I'm gonna go do it. I think he passed away like a few months later, or like a year, something later. But that's how powerful it is. It's so powerful to the point where you can be 100% aware that what you're doing does not convene you, it's not actually good for you, and you still cannot stop. And that's something you don't, it's just not worth the risk in any way. And that keeps a lot of people poor. Now, and by the way, it's not just addictions in the sense of like drinking or powder or what's the other stuff, the green stuff. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? But it's also, for example, the addiction of constantly seeking risk, the addiction of, it's a bunch of different factors, okay? It's not just like those consumable addictions, but it's also just physical addictions and everything else, okay? Now, number 4 here is, this one was so obvious and I did not guess it. And it was basically appearances. Like, I had this massive problem where my uncle told me, Tommy, you know why people are broke? There are so many people on this planet that are broke because they don't want to seem broke. And I said, what? And it makes so much sense when he said it. So many people are broke because they don't want to seem or look broke. How many people do you know? And this reminded me of my friend. Well, I had this friend. We're no longer friends, really. And he told me one day, Tommy, can I borrow $1? And I look at him, and I'm like, what do you mean you want $1? And I ask him, take out your wallet. He takes it out, and I'm like, what is that? He says, it's Gucci. Open it. Nothing inside of it. And he's wearing like these $200 jeans, these $300 jacket. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, why do you need $1? By the way, it's back in high school. He was like one of the only people actually working, and obviously he was working for the looks, appearances. And that's something that's so powerful. And for me, I suffered from this a lot. When I was in college, I spent so much money on shoes, so much money on clothes, trying to look cool. And I remember looking at my closet and being like, yo, there's so much stuff in there. And my pockets were filled with lint. I had no money. I was like, this is a problem. I cannot keep this up. And thank God I figured that out then, and I sold everything. And I was like, I'd rather be rich than look rich. Like, what's the point? You know what I mean? So it's one of those things that I see happen all the time, and not just with dumb people or, no, it's a lot of smart people, middle class people, upper class people that and by the way, there's a way to keep everybody broke. Okay, it's kind of crazy, but you can keep poor people broke, middle class people broke, upper class people broke, because there's always something out there to actually buy to keep you on that level. If you can buy a car that's a Toyota, keep you poor real quick. Get you a little mortgage, keep you poor real quick. Get you this big house with the Tesla, with the solar panels, with the everything, keep you poor. Like, there's always an option to keep you on this borderline of being broke and poor just for the sake of appearances. My rule is simple. I do things to do them, okay? Like, for the actual factor of wealth. I'm not interested if you think I look good, if you think I look rich, I don't really care about it. Appearances don't matter to me. And that tends to happen when you grow in confidence, when you surround yourself with good people, and when you just stop worrying about other people. I think Will Smith says, so many people try to impress people that don't care about them or something like that. I messed up that quote, guys, but you guys get the point. So those are the 4 things that keep people broke. Women, addictions, games, and lastly, also appearances. I hope this video helped you, and if you have any of these problems, like, yo, it's normal. Like, it's normal in the sense that it's normal, but in the sense that you shouldn't make that a habit or make it normal or make justifications to keep those things actually going. You should try to fix them. My point is, you having this problem is not like you're special, like you're the only person, but it does tell you you need to change this to actually level up, okay? And that's fine. It takes time to level up, and that's a part of the game. And it doesn't happen overnight, because usually problems are not built overnight. It takes a while to get problematic. So it's gonna take a while to unwind that problem, and that's also fine. Now, comment down below the number 4 if you made it all the way to the end of this video, and comment down below any more questions you might have or any more things I might miss. What are other things that you think that might keep somebody poor, okay? As always, guys, like, subscribe, hit the bell, shit notified. I won't tell my uncle I made this video so he doesn't ask for money. I'm just kidding, he's awesome. But as always, like, subscribe, hit the bell, shit notified. Up here is another video, and over here's my face, click subscribe, and as always, long-term team officially out. Peace.